like to call to order the Environmental Matters Committee meeting for, what was this, May 16th, 2018. And for the record, all the members are present.
Present.
Physically here.
Yeah, I think I'm going to adjust the agenda a bit. Dan Neese was going to come and present, but I think he said he may have to go to jury duty. So I still would like to hear from him at some point. So I'll see if we can reschedule that at a future time. But for today, let's see. I do kind of want to get our official business out of the way. So Pete or Sally, would you be willing to start with the weather together, and then we can move into the development update?
Approve the minutes.
Oh, minutes?
Move
Sorry,
approval
yes.
of the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor? Say aye.
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 Thank you, Tina. What do we do now?
Good afternoon. Pete Gutwell, the Director of Planning and Zoning, along with Dr. Nash, Chief of Comprehensive Planning. She loves it when I call her Dr. Nash, by the way. The Cultural Resource Hazard Mitigation Plan, I know we had a work session about a month ago. I had a PowerPoint that I went through and described the structure of the document and some of the key components. And what we're calling the Stapley Worksheet, which is basically the goals, objectives, and strategies outlined for the plan. I'm not sure how much more detail, but I'll go through an overview. Obviously, this is about preparing the city for flood adaptation and around the city dock and for the whole city, and talking about sea level rise and the nuisance flooding that is occurring down at our city dock. In terms of the major objectives and goals outlined, I think I'll just highlight those because there is the cultural landscape survey that was done, but the basis of the Cultural Resource Hazard Mitigation Plan was to implement a public awareness and engagement program, to communicate with the property owners and businesses of the issues and things that they can be doing. Lead building resilience efforts in flood adaptation and mitigation, continue the Weather Together program. We need to kickstart that again, that program of ongoing community and experts in the field discussion points and meetings. The biggest point in this part is doing a community rating system, getting ourselves to have a community rating system that will provide for flood insurance reductions on mortgages. That requires an audit being done, and I think Office of Emergency Management is looking for funds to help us complete that task for resources. Then there is the Develop a Disaster Response and Recovery Plan, what we're calling to Build Back Better. This is looking at our review processes, not only from the historic district, but from the building and zoning reviews, that when we do have incidences and events, how we get the businesses and property owners back up and running again. And I know I'm going really fast, so stop me if you have questions. Then another goal is to align land use, economic development, environmental regulatory activities to protect the city's historic character. This is incorporating adaptation techniques into our floodplain management regulations, and look at the Secretary's and Interior's standards for rehabilitation in our historic district, so we are able to deal with flood adaptation in our historic district. And this
Pete,
is
which one are you on? Which number?
align land use, economic development, environmental and regulatory activities. And on the sheet,
It's goal 4.
Oh, go for it.
number 4. Yeah. And this would also be looking at updating our zoning ordinance for these to encourage and incentivize those adaptation measures and controls.
Would it be possible for the council committee to get a copy of that colorful?
This one? Sure, absolutely. It should be on the website, but I'll get each of you.
The last page of the pages of the plan.
Yeah, but some of us don't have color printers.
Okay, oh, gotcha. Sure, will do.
We're just poor folk.
Pete, could I ask a question?
Sure.
This is a question that my constituents who have been sort of at ground zero in this with the flooding and all, and participating in these outreach for the last several years under the umbrella of Lisa Craig and her efforts. So here we are. We are in the process of securing FEMA money for the tangible flood
Project.
mitigation project. Is, my understanding is this report was also required for getting FEMA money, or is there, what is the relationship, I guess, of this report with perhaps AECOM's scope of work?
Yes, this.
Is that a fair question?
Well, yeah, in order to qualify for certain funds, they want to see policies and plans put in place. And this is one of those that helps as we go for like the CRS funding. Kevin has asked me several times, where are we with the Cultural Resource Hazard Mitigation Plan? Because they want to see some kind of policy adoption by the legislative body before they give us the fundings. So he's looking for money for the community rating system, for resources on that, and they were looking for something, and I keep pointing to this, because this is where your policy, when you adopt this, you're adopting a policy for dealing with the floodplain adaptation, and you're also committing, you know, as a policy that we need to do this community rating system. So they don't want to give money that they don't think is going to be used wisely, I guess.
So is this going to be under the office of, which department
Well,
is taking this over?
As we said at the work session, it'll be a coordinated effort between, because the audit would be all the building permits and plan approvals, so the audit would be looking at what actually has been built in the city over the past couple of years. So it would be a combination of Office of Environmental Policy, to me would be doing the yeoman's work on a lot of this stuff, but certainly we would be coordinating with them, maybe leading pieces of this for, you know, with them, and Office of Emergency Management. And I always look at Kevin because he seems to be able to get the money, so. But it would be a coordinated effort, at least with those three departments in a minimum, and then Public Works for implementing some of the capital improvement program that we talk about in this plan, so.
The
certainly-
reason I'm asking is because of the budget. You know, I know that there was talk about this, you know, this all being under the umbrella of some kind of resiliency officer, and we
Correct.
clearly don't have that, so there has to be this more, you know, reason for this to be coordinated between departments,
Yeah.
Office of OEM and Environmental and yourselves. I guess, would you agree with that, Rob? It's a big effort. Thanks.
Sure.
And it's why OEP is in the city manager's office.
Correct.
Yeah, but I think the fortuitous aspect of this was the marrying of the historic Annapolis with the FEMA, this being a subset of the FEMA response. I worry, and I think it is the obligation of this committee to make sure that the efforts are sustained. The efforts are sustained and continued, and that means funding as well as other aspects. I have a different question, which is, at all of our fun meetings that we had, there were cartoon drawings of capturing all the meetings. Whatever happened to them?
We still have them in our office, and they were also photographed, and so we have them digitally.
I think I showed it as part of my PowerPoint presentation, as part of the public participation process. I mean, that's one of the things that FEMA wants to see, is how much was the public involved. And this document, when it's in its full colors, I mean, really documents the public participation process. I mean, it was almost a 2-year process of all the different meetings, outreaches, the speaking engagements, the Keeping Your History Above Water conference, John Englander events. All of that stuff has been documented and really shines a light on what the city has been doing and working on. So.
I have another question. Oh, sorry.
Just to follow up on that, have any other communities asked us for or taken advantage of the work that we've done? Do we have any-
Baltimore City has asked for some information, and so I know they're working on it and looking at doing the same type of activity in Baltimore City. That's the only one so far.
Good, because we need to be in line first for all of the money. We don't want anybody else to catch on.
Lisa Craig explained to me once that the Weather It Together has to keep, going
Right.
because of the premium. It reduces, or there's points involved that reduces FEMA
So
flood
the community
insurance.
rating system does that, but part of the community rating system is that public outreach coordinated
Oh,
efforts
okay.
and looking at what you're doing. So you're coordinating with across agencies, departments, businesses, and residential. That's what the Weather Together is all about, coordinating and keeping everybody informed of what's going on, what's the state of the art, programs, projects, those kinds of things. And that's sort of what the Weather Together sort of theme and focal point of that, or that program is.
So to Ross's point, my colleague's point, would be beneficial for this committee to get a status, quarterly or so, or,
To
Yeah,
me,
that's
that's in the,
thinking.
it's one of the objectives, it's one of the strategies that's in here. Keeping that together, keeping the Weather Together going, keeping the coordination effort moving forward, but, we haven't done a lot lately, since Lisa's departure, so we need to,
Well,
ramp that back up.
And she was, and I think she was really largely filling a void in the city at the time, and just did an exemplary job. So, but at this point, I think,
Two jobs.
well, yeah, 2 jobs, and but I think looking at this list, the colored list, it's a lot that we need to do. And you've
Mhm.
identified. It's great that you've identified all these tasks that need to be done, and in my mind, it really justifies, if not having a dedicated position, I think you definitely, at the least, need somebody who's going to help, or an office, ideally, to help coordinate all of these activities, make sure that these things are getting done. And that's where I think we're going to have to rely on not only your department, but also, I think, heavily on environmental policy to help do some of this. But I am wondering, have you prioritized anything that you would like to see done in the
I think
short term?
the plan, well, yeah, I mean, the top priority for me is to get the community rating system done. It really is the first and foremost, and Kevin would support and continues to, he's going after the money for that, so, that is first and foremost. But the Weather Together, I think at the end of in the end, or the appendices of the document, we talk about the 4 priorities of public engagement and awareness and those types of things, the objectives, I should say. But the CRS is the first and foremost thing, and that will take some work. That is the first and foremost thing. We've been talking about doing it for 2 to 3, since I've been here, and probably before then, and we need to get that done. So, and that'll show the city's commitment to flood adaptation, and getting ready for it, so.
And will this be adopted as a part of the comprehensive plan?
Well, we've talked about that, but to me, the hazard mitigation plan should be, but it's not currently structured this way. The hazard mitigation plan really should be part of the comprehensive plan, and this is part of the hazard mitigation plan. This will be an element of the hazard mitigation plan, is how we described it to FEMA and MEMA. So they've agreed to that, and they're waiting for this piece to the hazard mitigation plan. So that's the hazard mitigation plan, is what Kevin does in order for us to recover funds in emergencies, like snow emergencies and those kinds of things. So this is a piece of that, but in my 2 cents, the hazard mitigation plan should really be a part of the comprehensive plan, because it is the strategies from a high level for the entire city, so.
But that gives it a higher status, I think, because that's part of the state plan, then if we
Right.
make it. So, I want to compliment you. I know a lot of work went on this after Lisa left, and, of course, some of us have been involved all along. Where are we getting this feedback? But I think this has pulled together into a pretty intelligible package, and I do think, I agree with the chair, next step is to We've talked often about a resiliency officer, a focal point. I'm worried that this is going to get lost in having several different homes, but not necessarily somebody that's going to manage it. And I know you and I have talked about all the different things on the Planning and Zoning Department's plate. It's not a good time to be talking about new hires, particularly with big tax rate increases. I think you're getting so far the planner that you really need, but I think right after that, we really do have to talk about how we're going to manage this. I think with one focal person, probably at the city manager level, but if not, having a specific home. Office of Emergency Management does a lot of really neat things, and they get a lot of money for grants, and I think that marriage is a very healthy one, but I'm worried that there's a sustainability in terms of keeping this effort going and keeping us in front of the people that we need to be in front of to start getting the money to actually figure out what we are going to do about sea level rise. I've already written Eastport off, but we have to save downtown. So, I mean, I think at least, but I suspect this committee would be receptive in hearing about the resources it's going to take to keep this moving along. So.
Yeah, let me reiterate, the worksheet, I mean, I just skimmed through it, it's a big effort. I
Yeah.
mean, let's not be mistaken here, it's kind of humongous.
It's not going to be done overnight, but I think it's doable.
Is it
Trust
doable?
me, Sally and I, we scrubbed this thing, and
Okay.
we looked,
Okay.
okay, what's doable, what's going to be a little longer, what's going to be something that will be ongoing. There's a lot of activities that we currently do, we just need to
Oh, that's good to hear.
focus them on flood adaptation. So there's some things that are done, we just might need to expand them a little bit and utilize existing resources. It really is about utilizing a lot of existing resources.
Great. Okay, maybe I'm overreacting as usual.
No,
Yeah, and I would like to, well, if there's anything else you'd like to highlight, but I do want to just reiterate the point that I think this is an excellent effort, monumental effort, great job on this, and I think this is something I definitely want to, one of those documents I want to make sure we don't just lose in a couple years. So I know that I'll probably invite you back periodically to, along with an office, because I'm hoping that the new director for Office of Environmental Policy will be taking on a lot of these responsibilities to coordinate, and so I'll probably have
that's my
both of
thought
you
as well,
here
but
as
I
well.
mean, I'm not the city manager.
Yeah, neither are we. So.
Yeah, we need more than coordinators, though. We need worker bees, and that's in short supply. So I think it's, as stewards of the city, and because this is essential to the long-term survival of the city, I think it's up to us to keep track of that. And I think it's this committee that really has to stay on top of that. Which usually means more work for you, not more staff, but.
Well, it means quarterly, like you said, maybe, quarterly reports of what's going on. I think that's reasonable request, yeah.
Any other comments from my colleagues? Pete, Dr. Nash, would you like anything else to say on that? No? Okay.
Good.
Well, do you want to move right into the development update?
Sure, absolutely.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. I need to make a motion first. I
Yeah.
move that, or I'm sorry, I will entertain a motion for a favorable
So moved.
recommendation.
Okay, so we're voting on the resolution?
Well,
So-
we make a
A
recommendation
recommendation.
A recommendation.
to the council.
Yes.
Okay, I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, in terms of updates to development activity, I'll highlight some of the things with forest conservation, and then if there's anything else, you guys can. We had 3 public hearings on the Tyler Heights Elementary School, the town courts, and Parole Place. So they had all their public hearings. I think it was on April 12th. The Annapolis Public Library, we have given preliminary approval for its Forest Conservation Plan. The demo permit has been issued for that, and the grading permit, I believe, is like real close to giving its initial approval for the library.
On Pete, I know you like to go super speed down down this list, but the question, 39 Hudson here at the top.
Okay?
Any update on the coordinating with the stream restoration concerns that the public had?
I do not. I know Tom contacted the county on that, but I haven't heard. I can double check, but I haven't heard anything back. I know he contacted them and there wasn't, I don't know if he ever heard back from the county. Anything else on that first page before I?
Well, I'm curious about the library. When you say forest conservation plan, what's their plan? I mean, it's a net loss of 0 or what?
Yeah, it was actually, I think they're protecting the trees that were there.
Yeah.
They're above their threshold, and they're good to go. Mostly what they're doing is protecting to the left-hand side where you see those mature trees on the left-hand side of
Yeah.
the property. That's what they're protecting at this point, off the top of my head. I mean,
Yeah.
I can't remember the plan itself, but
Well, that's exciting.
yeah.
Did they have to afforest at
There
all,
was
or
some
did-
afforestation, and that they'll be doing, I guess, in the parking lot, and out back, what will be now out back. I know they'll be putting some trees in there, and there's a lot of stormwater management out back as well, so there was some redesign on the stormwater management, just a couple weeks ago. That's why I said the grading permit's real close to being issued. And most of that was to direct the stormwater management away from the parking lots and into the ESDs, the drain sub areas. What they call them, gardens. They're the bioretention gardens. Yeah, sorry, drawing a blank. So that's off the top. There wasn't much to do for that property. Obviously, it was a redevelopment and there was an expansion, but then they weren't really touching a lot of the trees. So. Anything else? Moving on. Like I said, Central Park, that's under review. That was mostly afforestation on that property as well. And there's staff comments, I know, that they had their calculations incorrect, so a lot of the comments were about getting the percentages and calculations correct for afforestation. But in terms of, there's a lot of other issues with this property outside of the forest conservation that we're working through, and a lot of staff comments and working through that. So that's still under, actually pending revisions at this point in time. They've received a bunch of our comments from Public Works as well as Planning and Zoning.
Are they still going to be putting in a trail connector?
That
With
is one of the
Truxton Park
comments from Ms. Nash, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, you wanted a 10-foot wide, they weren't provided, yeah, something to that effect. All right.
But that's what we asked for.
Excellent, okay.
Only update on Grissom Square is that they have their grading permit, has their initial approval.
Oh, and Bay Village Assisted Living, did they
This
get
is
the
just-
grading permit yet?
Yeah, they've got initial approval for the grading permit.
They're still just a
But-
holding pattern?
I'm sorry?
They're still just in a holding pattern? I don't think they've broken ground yet.
They haven't broken ground yet. Over a year ago, we had a conversation about changing the unit type because the market had changed since that thing had gotten approved. So I think there were some adjustments to that, but other than that, yeah, they just got their grading permit, so I don't think there's been any other movement on that property.
And on Chesapeake Grove at Bembe Beach, any progress in talking about public access
That
to their waterfront?
Right, it's out there, they're aware of it, there's a number of other comments. They still haven't identified their mitigation requirements for the critical area, tree
Okay.
replacement, we're still working on that. I think we've received to date a revised spreadsheet of which trees were being removed, because there was confusion over what they were titling certain things. So I think we got that all squared away with their landscaped architect. There are some architectural issues, and there are some other existing easement issues, legal issues that we're still trying to house that abandoned. So there's some other outside issues associated with that. But there hasn't been, I haven't heard anything more about the public access to the waterfront.
So they're not ready to go to the planning commission anytime soon, it sounds like.
No, it doesn't sound like it. And then the only other ones that I talked about was town courts. We just had the public hearings on that. That's, I think that's all squared away, it's still under review. Again, we have a couple of other issues associated with that. There are some architectural issues, there are some text amendment issues with that, and this is the property that's asking for tax credits as well. So, but, you know, the FSD has been approved and the Forest Conservation Plan is under review, but I don't think there's any issues with that. They tightened up that, they moved a lot of the development area away from some of the more environmental sensitive areas. Tom asked him to move that and scoot it
Which one are
over.
you talking about?
This is Town Courts, it's 2010 West Street, next to the
Oh.
Capitol, I'm sorry.
Is that the workforce housing one? The company
Yes.
begins with a P? Yeah.
Mhm.
Can I go back a page?
Sure.
Just for the record, the Public Works maintenance facility, so
I'm
just,
out of order myself.
it looks like everything has been, it's been left off, where all of the grading, what's the last, it's ready for the shovel, pretty much. I mean, it looks like it's the building permit. What's the-
Everything's been issued for that.
What's that?
The Public Works facility off Spa Road?
Yeah, it says
Yeah.
everything what's been issued, I guess is my question. Public Works maintenance facility.
Everything, the
I
I
grading.
know it's on
Grading
hold,
permit.
but I just,
That
everything.
was ready to award the contract. That had all the approvals in place.
Okay. Let the record show. All right.
Well, and so does the capital improvement plan show that, but I don't think that's the reality.
Okay,
We're waiting to see.
okay.
I'm sorry, I did skip over page 3. I was on the front of the, I tried to save trees. No, I'm just
I
kidding.
know, it's just
Go to
because
the
it had
tree ones.
lost at Eastport Landing on there, right?
No, well, I was gonna talk about Parole Place. That still is under review. There's some minor adjustments, again, trying to protect some of the steep slopes there that I think were some of the comments. We have received the Indianapolis Environmental Commission's comments, and Tom is reviewing those and going through all of that. But there's gonna be some changes. I think he's gonna require some revisions to that Forest Conservation Plan he wants to push it further away from some of those steep slopes, from my understanding, talking to him right before I came over here, so.
Oh, Parole Place?
Yeah, sorry, Parole Place. I know I skipped, I jumped, I didn't,
Yeah, that's one of the largest, I think, that fall underneath the new Forest Conservation Act. So I saw in the plans, they did delineate the steep slope buffer, the new steep slope buffer and expanded stream buffer. But yeah, it looked like they were encroaching a few areas.
yes. Mhm.
But that's 200 and some units, I believe, right?
Yeah, it's 90 residential units and 68 townhomes, so 100, yeah, not quite 200.
Is that being done as special mix plan development?
Yes, it is.
So now that the budget's done, I will be back.
Well,
It has-
from my understanding, this is not an issue, it's nowhere near the density of that would be. So
It's 30,000 square feet of, 30,000 square feet of commercial with 90 units over top of it. I mean, I think, and some height questions is one of the things you can't change under special mix plan development is.
it's
height.
a large tract of land that's, a lot of it's going to be protected again because of the steep slopes and so.
No. Well, because it seems to be providing a lot of the reverberation. Well, yeah, so is it just forewarned?
Okay. Duly noted.
Pete, I know we're all sort of out of order here, but what happened to the St. Mary's School addition, or what is happening with that?
I have no idea. I mean, that kind of went,
I didn't mean to stump you, but yeah, there was, I guess maybe they're just waiting.
You're
a month.
jumping around on pages.
Yeah.
I know, it's,
Yeah,
it's
I-
alphabetical, so.
But that one I can tell you, yeah, they went into an abyss. I mean, they just disappeared. They haven't been back to us. It's, I think was it the traffic study we were gonna do? I can't remember, but they haven't been back.
You didn't hear that they're moving the whole school over to St. John's over in the county? They're getting rid of this whole facility?
They're mad at us.
So, yeah, that one's been in limbo for a while. And then I am really jumping to the end because I was at town courts. So if you guys have other questions,
Well, South Annapolis Yacht Center, is there, I've heard there may be an issue there about, again, public access, that they promised apparently during a number of public meetings that they were going to provide for small craft public access, but now I hear them, are they backtracking, are they still gonna do that, or?
I don't think there's anything that's formally requiring them for that, but I think the developer and property owner has said that, doesn't have any problem with, people wanting to, utilize the facility, but there's nothing formal or or legally that binds them to provide that.
Has Plan and Zoning made that recommendation?
Did not put that condition on them. They talked about it at the planning commission, but did not end up putting that condition on there. I think there's a lot of legal advice going back and forth about liability, who would take ownership of that, who would take maintenance. If something happened, who would be required to take liability for the situation. So, I think the city attorney was not, thought that was an issue, and so,
This was a while ago, right?
yeah.
Several months ago.
Planning commission didn't make that a condition.
Legal liability, it's the death of a lot of good ideas. Well, thank you. What else? Anything else? Any other questions on these?
Not on this, I think there's some,
Providence Point, I think, is the holding pattern, right?
We're working, Providence Point, that's a weekly conversation, Tom and myself, sometimes going through, matching the site plan and with the forest conservation and priority forest that we're looking to try and save. So we have been working through a number of their different issues. It's getting to be about, was every other week, and sometimes it's every week, just because we couldn't get them moving in any kind of direction. So, and credit to Larry Bradshaw, he wanted, he got involved personally to talk about what it is to protect and shrink the size of that. Right now, they reduced the building size by 30%. So that was the last I saw. So looking to protect some more of that priority forest in that area, but that continues to be an ongoing iteration of moving things around and changing the building site around with different wings and different, corridors. So, but I think that's progressing. I think there's been a lot of compromise and getting to a footprint where I think people will be happy. I think even Mr. Weingrad was, when apparently I saw him in the hallway out here, he was pretty happy about the direction it was
is that
going.
possible?
Yeah. So that's where that one kind of sits. It's just, it's real conceptual concept stage at this point. But
Rocky Gorge, that says approved, it was approved last year. I don't have the sense anything is happening there.
No, I think the grading permit, there's still, we're still trying to punch out the grading permit. I think there's documentation that we're looking for, that we just got like last week, that was part of the MPDU. Interesting enough, I don't know, I guess this is public information, they're looking for, tax credits. So, they have applied or want to make application for that. So, that's all I know about that project. So the grading permits, for the whole site is right there to be punched out, but when you start to see the full-fledged construction, I'm not sure.
So how long can they wait after they've gotten approval before they have to start doing
Well,
work?
this is one of the projects that got wrapped in that whole tolling, and then they completed substantial construction. They did do some clearing, they did put some infrastructure in, they had building permits. So, I think it was a determination that it was vested. So, the grading permit for the whole site is going to be the issue. They had a phase one grading permit, and that's what got vested. It's so typically, yeah, you have to, a grading permit's only good for, you must commence construction in 90 days. You can ask for 6-month extensions up to 2 years, I think.
It's a bit of a sore subject because I recall there was a conversation at the time. I believe the tolling did not specifically apply to Title 17,
Oh.
which would be the grading, even though I believe Hyatt was trying to assert that it did. So and that might be a question for that would be a question for the law office, but I'm not entirely sure.
That's
that's
all before my time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I
plead the
guess-
fifth. No.
My concern is they did all that clear cutting, and we have had a lot of days like today. Is anyone checking to make sure that we're not just washing gigogs of soil into creeks?
I do believe Mr. Matt Waters does. He has raised some concerns to me about the grading permit and, how long do we allow this to continue to go on? And we keep thinking that, the whole grading permit will be issued and they'll get, under construction. But there are sediment and erosion controls measures out there. I can check with him to make sure that they are continue to be maintained.
I mean, I think it's been almost 3 years
Yeah.
now. And the grass is pretty well established.
Oh,
They might even be having new trees come up there now. Who knows?
Good. Thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
sure. The only other one I was gonna tell is Tyler Heights Elementary School, and that should be ready to go. Just checked on that today, so, for the grading permit, the redevelopment of Tyler Heights Elementary School. They're demolishing and rebuilding a whole new elementary school on site.
Two pieces of information. One I need, are we done with the mediation at the,
Where's my
whatever it's
attorney?
called, lofts?
I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say. Yes, I believe there is an agreement that there's an agreement that has been drafted, has been reviewed. I'm good with it, but I don't know
That's
what
all
it
I
is.
wanted to know. If you're good with it, and it's still B2, can we say that?
Still B2 and doesn't bind me, so.
All right, perfect. That's exactly. For your information, yesterday we had the first meeting of the ad hoc parking committee for Eastport, and as always, there'll probably be some requests from you. What was it? I'm supposed to ask you about documentation. Well, documentation, I don't know if you still have it or even know anyone in your office who does, about the Annapolis City Marina and the agreements on parking for the Annapolis City Marina. I know I have an old typewriter written document that I have to find, but they're looking at that. And then they wanted to know documentation.
Documentation regarding parking or the approval?
Parking, yeah. Because I think there were all kinds of special agreements. I believe the parking at ground level, which is below the structured parking, is for the marina and is not public, but the parking on the top is supposed to be public parking. And I've been asked to find the documentation that sets out the parameters for that.
Okay.
But there was another big project. I'll have to go back to my notes that
Okay.
I'm supposed to. So just a warning, that
Okay.
group is just starting. They have a target of coming up with a draft report by the end of June, and hopefully a report that'll come to me which probably will request legislation and get into, oh, I know what it is, the documentation for the permit parking request by the 300 block of Burnside that went to the parking commission,
Transportation
parking
board.
board,
Transportation board.
Pardon?
Transportation board.
Transportation board, but I don't know whether you have.
No, you'll probably have to ask transportation.
Yeah, Rick.
Transportation, okay. So they wanted to know what they have, what they put to the transportation board. I know the transportation board came back with a recommendation to the transportation committee a few years ago, and it, for some reason or other, died there. But
If you want a starting point, you can always look at the Eastport traffic study.
yes, well, we are looking at that, and there was also a 2003 Eastport Civic Association parking study that we're also trying to relocate. So, just a friendly warning that people are up to more mischief.
Okay.
And Pete, again, if it would be, if at all possible, it'd be nice to see the, for the forest conservation projects, what kind of,
The numbers,
yeah.
yeah.
Right.
We're working on that.
We're working
Yeah,
on
okay.
that. I've asked Tom Smith to add those, and it is on
Yeah.
his to-do list.
So this is my plug for that planner position?
Touche. All right, so I'd like to invite anybody who would like to come up to talk about the stormwater P3 agreement. Thank you both.
Thank you, Pete and Nancy.
I don't know who wants to get started.
Or Sally. Sally.
Ms. Hodo.
Sally. Nancy Drew. What are we doing now?
We're doing the Green Vest, talking about the Green Vest design, build, operate, maintain RFP that was put out. So someone want to give us some background? 'Cause I really only, I've heard rumors about this for the past number of months, but really only heard details recently. And so I'm guessing my colleagues may be
Yeah.
even more in the dark. So
Yeah, I
can you
don't
just,
even know what it
somebody
is.
just give a briefing on
Sure,
what the bid was? What
I'll
the-
start off and then the two folks next to me can chime in. So David Gerald, Director of Public Works. So about a year ago, we started procurement process for handling the impervious area restoration projects that we expected to be required by the new MS4 permit. We weren't certain that new permit was going to have that requirement to treat 20% of the untreated impervious area in the city, but we had pretty good indications that it was going to. So we thought we'd get ahead of the process and get this contract in place. We modeled it somewhat on the contract that Prince George's County has, since they're a phase one. And they've been using that for several years. So it's a design, build, operate, and maintain contract. So it's a long-term agreement. We hope to, and it's still in procurement, so we've selected a firm and we're still negotiating a contract with them. But the intent is that we'll have a long-term partner for these projects that get done.
It looked like 20 years too, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
20 years. So we have the list of projects that AECom put together, the water quality projects, sort of an initial starting list. So we put those into the RFP package just as a starting list. We certainly encourage them to develop potentially other projects that have more bang for the buck. So the way it's going to be structured is that each year we'll put a certain amount of money that's into the CIP for these projects. We have until 2025 to complete all of the projects. We weren't sure what that timing was going to be, but we have the permit now. It just came out a week or two ago, and it's till 2025. So we're going to need to get this contract ramped up and get it moving to make that time frame. But at the beginning of each fiscal year, they're going to come forward with whatever money is put into the CIP and say, we think that this is the best expenditure of your funds for this coming fiscal year to help meet that goal. So again, we expect a lot of collaboration back and forth. I guess, can we talk about the contractor that we're dealing with? Sure. Okay. So the contractor is Greenvest
So you've already selected it.
that we've selected and that we're negotiating with. That's actually it's going to be a full team. So Greenvest sort of does a lot of the high-level financial analysis and so forth. Their team is Biohabitats, the South River Federation, EQR, which is Environmental Quality Resources, Princeton Hydro, and Hannon Armstrong. So it's a pretty strong team. We had good response. They were a very strong team, and that's why they got selected. So we're very happy to have them as a partner and looking forward to working with them on these projects.
That is a really great group.
So with that, I guess you guys can chime in.
So the current status, as David said, we just, Brian Snyder, Procurement Officer in the Finance Office. As David indicated, he just received the MS4 permit. We forwarded that to the Greenvest Group, so they're kind of incorporating that into their review of the current agreement that we had provided to them. Ashley Leonard had worked hard as far as redlining and getting some things lined up. And then there's a second part to the agreement that talks about the operational aspects. There are two parts to it. There's the capital funding, which will be for the building, for whatever BMPs that we do take on and try to install. And then there'd be other funding from the stormwater fees that are collected that could go for operational aspects. So once the BMP's installed, we're not going to be maintaining them. They're going to be operating. They're going to be doing monitoring. They will also be doing the same with some of the non-governmental organizations that have already installed or are installing some practices in the area. So it's going to cover all the aspects that are necessary to make this thing go. And we already started one with a grant, the Aimbridge project, and that's just about done. I'd let Racine talk about that, but that one was on the whip.
That's separate from this.
Yes, had a DNR grant for $175,000. So that project is done by EQR and Biohabitats. So.
This.
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
although we've done design build in the past, just a few, including the water treatment plant, we've never done design build, operate, maintain. So this is a new contract vehicle. So it's taken a little bit longer than usual just because we've never done this before. We're also trying to build in some performance requirements, and Greenvest is very supportive of that concept that if these BMPs don't meet the requirements, then they're not going to get paid as much as they would otherwise. So they're very supportive of that. So we're trying to build that in, along with a lot of flexibility to collaborate and decide what the best projects are as we go forward.
So, I'm trying to sort all these things out. Does this relate at all to the watershed improvement plan, or is this a different thing? I can't figure out what MS4 versus WIP versus all this other stuff is.
My understanding is that there are projects that have already been installed that they can incorporate into getting us credit with MDE. But they would also take our WIP that AECOM produced for us, and I am sorry, my name is Racine Hodo, I'm with the Office of Environmental Policy. They are going to also work on projects that were generated in our WIP. as well as come up with other projects.
So what would be a project that is outside of the WIP? That is a BMP, best management practices, that we would be building, like a new dam or?
Yeah, no, so an example of that is we have a lot of flooding issues over in Truxton Heights, as some of us in the room know very well. So that's going to be one of the first projects that we're going to take on is to try to figure out if we can do both water conveyance as well as water quality in the same project. So we hope that we'll be able to get some MS4 credits out of that, but also take care of the flooding issues that are over there. That's not in the WIP at all, but we identified that as being an area that desperately needs to be addressed because they flood all the time, the backyards, and now the front yards with the new project. So we think that there's a way to do that where you get both the water quality benefits as well as the flood mitigation benefits in the same area.
So, in terms of the nuisance flooding project, would treating the water there be an?
Yeah, so that's another great example as a potential one, but when we talked to AECom about that, and just based on our own analysis, that wouldn't rise to the top because of the cost that would be involved for the amount of treatment. But if we get in the future, in 2025, a second 20% reduction, then at that point the projects are going to get to be a lot more difficult and a lot more expensive, and it may be worthwhile to retrofit those pump stations with filters. But
Yes.
right now it's more expensive than what the benefit would be. There's cheaper projects out there.
Yeah, just to reiterate, yeah, so price per pound of treatment, it's much more expensive to do it on the pumps, which is why, for example, no discharge zone, it's much cheaper per pound to do it that method, which is why I hope we can get that money reinstated
Right. Well,
in terms of the enhancement.
Okay, good, so our paths cross, but I guess my request to you, Mr. Chair, is I've been off on a sabbatical doing budget.
Yes.
And I'm not up on MS4, I don't even know what MS4 means. I understand there's percentiles, the first 20%, second. I understand what the WIP is, but I think I personally need a more comprehensive picture on how all of these
Okay.
things. So I'm happy to get this news about
Yeah.
Greenvest. I don't have any information on it.
Okay.
But it feels like for me we're kind of jumping in the middle of the stream.
Yeah.
I don't know whether Ellie you're more on top of all of this than I am, but
I'm fascinated though, because these are the guys that did, when you're going on I-95 and you smell that wonderful wetland of the Elizabeth River, I think they did all of that work too, didn't they? They're big. I mean, well, they're local. There's an office in, which office is this that we have? Is it Maryland or?
Let's see where they are.
They're based in Annapolis.
Annapolis.
Do I have the wrong
They're
company?
in Annapolis.
I think.
Yeah.
It's not the National Green Vest
think
Company?
They're on Somerville Road.
Oh, I
in
have the wrong
Annapolis.
company.
Yeah, and,
Green,
But I think
No.
that and you're talking about up in New Jersey?
yeah, I have
Yeah,
greenvestus.com.
they said that they've done a lot of work up in New Jersey.
Yeah, there can't be
of this-
two green vests, yeah.
well, they may
Yeah.
have mitigation banks in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And
So can I talk about the pumping of the flood mitigation pump houses?
that's a different project.
No, yeah, but this talk about filtering and treating the water in the future perhaps, isn't that just short-term rain that we are collecting? It's sort of a closed loop system, if you will. I mean, it's not storm water that has been sitting and that we're pumping out. This is
No,
for,
it's just for stormwater, yeah.
Yeah.
But that's what all these BMPs are to treat the runoff, the stormwater runoff from the impervious.
but it's not
surfaces.
acute storm water that's from the flash flooding, I guess it's storm water that has been sitting there then and,
No, it would be designed to catch
all
catch
of any
the
storm.
larger, yeah, the larger storms up to the
But they
10-year
have,
storm.
but the pump houses do have screens though, right? of
They
the-
do, they
for
have
the
trash, what we call
deleterious
trash
stuff.
racks
Yeah.
to capture the
Okay.
larger, but it wouldn't catch, it wouldn't
Yeah.
capture any of the sediment.
So for this contract, design, build, you had to give them a scope of, a geographic scope of area, right?
Yeah, so it's at the beginning of each fiscal year, based on how much money is in the CIP, they will develop a list of proposed projects that will spend that amount of money. We'll negotiate that or talk about it. A lot of those will be from the WIP, so that's the tie-in to the
Okay,
WIP, is that,
okay.
that list that AECom developed were the ones that they thought were most beneficial for the
So-
dollars available to meet our MS4 requirement.
Wow,
So that'll be a starting point, but
Yeah.
Greenvest is gonna look for other opportunities out there that may be more advantageous. So at the beginning of each year, then we'll negotiate what that list is gonna be, and then they'll have those projects, and they'll start the design, move into construction on those with the money that we have in the CIP.
wow, that's really great.
So that's
coordinated.
the
good.
intent.
This is,
So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
this
like,
is.
it's not like I was thinking, oh my God, it's gonna be cost plus and they're gonna build
No,
on
thi-
it,
this
but
is a
no,
really,
this is
this is
great.
really excellent. I mean, this is, for my
Where did you get
colleagues,
all these pieces of paper?
Yeah, I don't have any of that.
I just sent them to you. Well, I just took a look at it myself recently, I
thought
can get
it-
them to you.
it
I know
looked
this
good.
is all done pretty quickly.
Excuse me, I also wanted to note that they have grant writers on their staff, so as well as money that the city would provide,
Yeah.
they would also go looking for other funds to fund projects.
Yeah, so this, I'm really happy when I've read through this. At first I was a bit skeptical, but, but to back up a little bit, and maybe I can get somebody in here to give more of a briefing on the
Yeah,
nuts
who's-
and bolts,
who's
but,
overall in
so there are
charge?
three,
Who's working on your staff?
well,
on this?
so there's three acronyms to be aware of. There's the federal NPDES, the National Pollutants Discharge Elimination System. MS4 is underneath that, that's more of a
Is that from
state,
South America?
state,
Is
yeah.
that just,
No.
just some part of MS?
Yeah, right. Talk to it, yeah. But the WIP basically tells us how we're gonna meet all these requirements and meet the TMDL. So that's what AECom put together, this report identifying. And they actually identified, blanking, I think it's about $9 million worth of projects and then $20 million worth of program costs. And this actually, Greenvest is estimating to meet the same pollutant reduction, actually a little more than AECom. They're actually estimating, where was it, about 7 million. So that's significant. So this really seems like a great deal for the city. We don't have to worry about the maintenance then. It's sort of built in, and actually there might be cost savings there because it sounds like they're going to be maintaining our existing BMPs, which we currently do. So they would be taking that on. So I don't know what kind of efficiencies we get out of that. But so there's a lot of those. So I'm really happy with this. What else did I want to say about this?
Just to interject, all roads lead back to the budget.
Yes.
So, we're getting the rate study. Teresa said that the rate study for water, sewer, and stormwater, what do we call it now, reconciliation, or redemption, whatever.
The watershed restoration fund.
Restoration, and I think I heard Teresa say that may need some more attention and funding from the council, that
Well,
we
will
may
be
not
doing
be
that.
adequately funded, as somebody
Yeah,
predicted.
We have somebody else looking at that, I believe.
Yeah, I think our anticipation is
AECom,
that
yeah.
for this year at least, we're gonna be okay. We have $1 million from the current year. We've got another $1 million coming in FY19, so that'll give us a good starting point. We really need to look at what the expenditure schedule is gonna be to get us to 2025 to do all those $7 million worth of projects over the next 7 years, which sounds like $1 million a year is right on the mark, but we need to look at that, and then we'll revisit that next year for the budget. But I don't.
But that's
it's
$1 million of bond funding, right?
Well, not necessarily.
And
Well,
that,
that's
that's
why-
the other thing, is it gonna be pay-go or is it gonna be
Yeah.
cash funded? I
If
think
it's-
originally we,
why not
or
fees?
bond funded.
Well, I'm gonna get you this, if you have a
Okay.
chance, because they actually identified two different funding mechanisms. One is pay-as-you-go, but the other they call, it's basically like this green bond approach,
yes,
which
right.
is what the Bay Foundation's been pushing. But they call it, I can't find the name right now. But it's essentially a setup where they have, it's a local bank that's on the New York Stock Exchange, where essentially they give a loan to Greenvest. And so Greenvest takes on the responsibility, and the city pays them kind of based on the success of these projects. If they succeed, they get paid, and we kind of pay a regular amount every year. So that makes it easier, I think, for us theoretically. I'd love to hear what Teresa thinks about it, but should make it easier for us to fund. I mean, my calculations were if you split out that 7 million, it's $350K a year. So we could, and I think if we follow that other model, the green bond model, we could potentially just take it right out of the
Environmental impact
stormwater
bonds.
fee. Yeah, it's environmental impact bonds, and
Yeah.
they do have another name for
Right.
it, I can't think of.
Well, we had, in the WIP, I think there was 25 million. Now, some of that was gonna be, private sector was doing it, some of it was gonna be grants. Some of it, the last mayor wanted to do it with issuing bonds, which I strongly disagree with, because we have a fee that's there, just like we have a fee for water and sewer. And, I'm a strong advocate of let's do it by fees, which I guess in the parlance translates to pay-go. But, I mean, I'm not a big fan of continuing to borrow.
Well, yeah, I
And-
don't think we would necessarily have to borrow for this.
Well, and I
Oh, thank
still
you.
think
It's
that
called
what I'm really
fixed
worried
price
about is.
performance. that's
Right,
what they
I'm
call it.
really worried is we're gonna, in the early years, we're gonna think we're okay, and then when all of the bolus of these things has to be put in place, then we're gonna be scrambling to find the money.
Well, I mean, but think of it, these are costs that we have to pay. And this is a
I-
lot cheaper than the other estimates. And plus, they actually have said they anticipate a 20 to 50% reduction of that 7 million because they'll be able to get grant funding through a number of, and the benefit to them, they are kind of a list of all-stars, is they have groups like the South River Federation who knows how to get the grant funding. And they have Biohabitats who has the really innovative designs. So I mean, I think there's a lot
Okay,
of,
well, but I think there are
potential for-
cross-cutting, I mean, generally I view grants as, allowing the city to live beyond its means temporarily. There are different kinds of grants, but, I just am very wary, and then all of these things come at the end of 5 years, a maintenance responsibility for the city.
that's what they would be taking on all the
Right,
maintenance.
okay,
for
so, all
20
right, I
years
just
at
wanna
least.
make sure that we've got,
Yeah.
So,
And that's good.
okay, so capital budget 101 here. So if I'm to understand, would they be taking over project number 77008 stormwater MS4 permit compliance for $1 million? Is
That's-
that the $1 million you're talking about?
That's the funding that we'll use to pay them for their
Okay.
services, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And not any others here. That's the bucket of money.
Yeah, and just as far as Alderman Arnett asked about responsibilities for all of this, so the overall MS4 permit is the responsibility of Racine's group, so Jackie Gild will head that up. We'll be responsible for the construction projects, the design and construction, and then to oversee the ongoing maintenance and management of those. So we'll have that piece, but that's a small piece of the whole MS4 permit, because the MS4 permit tells us everything about how we have to run our storm drain system.
so when I think of you, I tend to think of construction projects being the water purification plant. When I think of St. Luke's, I think of that as a construction project. Are we talking about construction in the sense of what St. Luke's
Yeah.
did? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's stream restoration.
It's
kinds
that
of
type of
things.
project, yeah,
Except
that
for
handles
the-
the stormwater.
But it
Yeah.
could also be cleaning up stormwater as it's rushing down. the
Except with a
street.
much more reliable contractor.
Will
Yeah.
that contract go through the city council?
No, so you all approved the funding, the MS4 funding in the CIP. Once that's approved and the money's appropriated, then the mayor has to sign the contracts,
Okay.
each of the agreements, but it doesn't come back to the council.
So I had one thing to point out, since you're still negotiating, maybe this will be helpful, but, so they identified how to get credit for the projects we have currently installed, had to get the nutrient reduction credits for the projects identified by AECom. And then they had their tier 3, which was additional projects they identified. And they kind of picked Crab Creek as their, I guess, example of here are these projects we can do, which is all well and good, but I guess my feedback would be to point them to a different watershed, one that's, I mean, this is in the city technically, but I'd rather see them do something in, for example, Back Creek. We have in between Ambridge and Timber Creek, there's a stream restoration potential. We have some right-of-way possibly with the railway bed there. And that was not identified for any work by AECom. I know Ms. Hodo is doing a smaller BMP project associated with that, but the stream's not touched. So my point is that would affect directly many more city residents in terms of, you know, we have all these residents on Back Creek, which is entirely ours. We have all these 2 communities that would abut that stream restoration versus, I think this is Crab Creek, where it drains into a forested area in the county. It'd be good for South River, and I'm not opposed to it, but I just think if there's anything to do to point them in a different direction or to look at some of our other watersheds, I think that might be.
Isn't that after we do Crystal Spring, it'll?
Well, yeah. Well, that's another point. We might be looking at Crystal Spring to pay for some of that.
Yeah, I think we agree. What we're trying to build into the contract is as much flexibility to use their expertise, not just rely on what AECom gave us. I think AECom's a good starting point, but I don't think it's the end all.
Yeah.
So we really are encouraging them to come forward with what they think are the best projects each year.
Okay.
Yeah, and to tag on to that, the AECom web report, they estimated that would take care of about 85% of our MS4 needs.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, Greenvest will have the flexibility to, you know, look at those projects, suggest other projects, do different things than what is recommended in the WIP. So, I mean, we wanted to give them the flexibility. They're the experts. They're out in the field, you know,
Yeah.
to move forward and give us their best way of approaching it, and so we can get the biggest bang for the buck.
Good. Yeah, and just I guess keep in mind for next fiscal year, and especially for the finance committee in terms of how this might lead to any kind of cost savings anywhere in the budget. For example, will this include the street sweeping program?
Right.
Because I know I've been told already by the county watershed protection administrator that we can piggyback on their contract if we need to, which I think may be, just for efficiency's sake, might make sense.
Yeah.
And on street sweeping, because I was just in DC for Mother's Day at my son's house, they do have street signs that
Posted.
don't allow parking. And
Yeah.
somebody asked me if we were still doing street sweeping, and I said, I thought we are, but I haven't seen the brown streak down the middle of the street lately, so I don't really know. But it is really a very effective way to keep stuff.
It is, yeah.
So I think we need to put on our parking lot for this committee discussion of how we can actually get the cars out of the way to really get effective street sweeping.
Yeah, we had that in San Diego when I was out there, and we actually had parking enforcement as part of the street sweeping. So we had parking enforcement following along,
Yeah.
and they actually made enough to pay for the program.
I like the sounds of that.
Baltimore has it. Baltimore
Right.
has it.
And DC too, it's just we don't, and I think we need to.
Should go over well in Ward 1.
It can gather up a lot of stuff that's just gonna get flushed into the bay, if we don't,
Yeah. Well, so you sure you don't want to give this contract to the council to vote on? And I jest.
But
no,
in terms of, I would have read it, but it wasn't loaded in here, and I
yeah,
guess we really do need to.
that's my fault. I
Yeah.
didn't
Okay,
send, I
well,
didn't
I
send that
won't-
to
I won't
Al.
cast blame, but, and I probably would have read it just before coming here, given I'm still working on the budget, but, I need to get caught up on this. I feel like I'm way behind, and If I'm gonna be a productive member of this committee, I need to get up to speed.
Can we get sent any other official documents there might be, I guess, or I guess once you complete I'll send out what I have so far.
Okay.
Any other?
No, thank you. That's a revelation.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, I think I just invited them last week or the week before, so thank you for pulling it together. That's it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Who's that? Racine? Yeah,
Mhm.
oh, yeah. Yeah, and very quietly.
Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Move, we adjourn?
Second?
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.